All right. Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for the introduction. I'm excited to be here. Can everybody hear me okay? Okay. So yeah, I have a small slide presentation that I can share if anyone, if that feels like interesting. I thought obviously being people into fiber and nature, it's always nice to see some images. So I can kind of go through a little bit of a slideshow and then just kind of take questions or inquiries or comments after and just participate a little bit in discussion. So let me try to present and see how this, I'm a little, I think we were all 100% Zoom, and then I've done little of like not very much. So I'm gonna see if I can
You should be able to share.
Okay. So let me go to share screen. So it says disabled participant screening. Let me see.
There you go. Try now.
Okay.
Again.
All right. Great. Try this and then see if I can present. Okay. Hopefully this won't run away from me, but can everybody see the image on the screen? Okay,
Yes.
Great. So I'm going to give a little bit of background. My work in Baltimore really began with the Baltimore Natural Dye Initiative, which began in the late fall of 2018, but officially in the spring of 2019. This is an image of myself, Rosa Chang in the middle, and Sun English on the left. And we are at a facility called Parks and People, and we're harvesting indigo. And this was in the season of September 2020. So essentially when the project started, it's a state-funded project that was a collaboration between Maryland Institute College of Art, Marbitco, Department of Housing and Community Development, Maryland Maryland State Arts Council, and the First Lady of the State, Yumi Hogan, who is a practicing artist and a professor adjunct at MICA. So with the project, sort of the inspiration was through work that Rosa Chang, who's in the middle, again, had been working on through her own practice in Brooklyn, where she was getting a master's, working in a studio that is a Japanese-based studio, but they had a Brooklyn outlet called Boiso. And Boiso works and processes indigo in the Japanese tradition, Tsukumo. So Rosa was learning that. She and Yumi had been friends and had a relationship. And so the inspiration sort of began in sort of their relationship and through Rosa's practice. And essentially, once the project got started, there was about $300,000 that was spread out over an 18-month pilot project. And that project allowed for curricular work where we were exploring the histories and sort of the nature of different industrial dyes, looking at native plants in the bioregion, along with a variety of like community engagements with some having been like the African American quilters of Baltimore, as well as students in and around Baltimore City. So it was a really broad, beautiful experience. And I think a lot of it was sort of, again, the inspiration for the studio that I founded in January 2020 called Blue Light Junction. Rosa Chang and myself, I'm sorry, I have a lot of like congestion today. Rosa Chang and myself were working in Greymount West, which is central Baltimore. We started a small natural dye garden there that is known now as Hidden Harvest Annex Dye Garden. So there's a vegetable garden across on one side, there's an alley between, and then an open lot. And so we took on that open lot during our artist in residency. And sometime in the late fall of 2019, one of the buildings became available that was right next to the garden. And I kind of hesitantly said to Rosa, like, do we need to have a space to do our work? And we investigated, and I proposed the idea of having a studio facility to the landlord. And he graciously accepted our offer. I got a little bit of seed funding through the project from MICA for $10,000. And we basically started the studio in January 2020. As we all know, that was the very beginning of what would be our current situation with the pandemic. So when we were meant to open in March of 2020, we were clearly hit with a lot of new and unimaginable happenings. And so essentially what we did coming off of the Natural Dye initiative was still going. Myself and Rosa were the farmers at Parks and People, which was a state funded part of the project. One of the things that we were uncertain of was like how long the project had a very specific end, but like, how do we continue to keep this ecosystem going? And so Blue Light Junction was the idea for that continuation, as well as being able to have more growing in the city, more farmers growing in the city. So let's see. So I'm going to go through. So this is what Blue Light Junction looked like when we began in January 2020. It is a alternative color lab, a processing center, and we were really focused on the preservation of natural dyes and their histories, as well as thinking about ways that we can utilize those things going forward in our present day experiences. And so we also, on the far right, the bottom right, you can see where we initially started the dye garden, and that was in the summer. I think this was the first season. You can see kind of some indigo. We had 2 rows of plants kind of embedded in there. And that was Rosa and myself working on the garden. We've also been really fortunate to have the community, whether that's the students at MICA, faculty, people in and or around the neighborhood, people within the context of our community, people within the context of agriculture, really show up and support the initiative and be inspired for like the sort of newness of it. I would definitely say on the East Coast, having been a resident of the West Coast for over a decade, there's a little bit of a variation in what people know there or relate to there specifically, and what's being sort of shown newly here on the East Coast. But what I love about that is that it gets to be democratic in that way. So it's not like all these people of a certain level know a certain thing, but people of a certain education. It's like everyone is like, what are you doing? You know, and so eager and so excited to hear more and to learn more. And so partly one of the things that we were trying to do was really vision for what the garden would be. And so one day we came in you know, right after the spring of 2020, and we're sort of looking at like, well, you know, we're all in lockdown and I think everyone could use some therapy. So gardening was really what we all kind of drew ourselves to. So from those 2 small rows, we decided that we had one of the harvest rows that was kind of split. And I walked in one day and said, okay, this is where the garden wants to go. And without having had a conversation, Rosa came, drew an illustration of it, and it was basically like the exact sort of idea that I had. And so that's one of the reasons why our friendship is so beautiful, our partnership as Natural Dye comrades, like it's been amazing. So on the bottom left, this is the beginning of 2020 in the sort of midsummer, where we were just getting all the indigo and all of our plants in. And the interesting part about looking at this now for me is that every single wood chip that had been laid down was brought in by Valeska Popolo. You know, she trucked it in from her and her Volkswagen. And, you know, I just say that to say that there is so much that we rely on one another. And so again, this sort of founding Blue Light Junction in no way makes it mine. And so I'd like to just extend that information to people that it is a community-led, community-stewarded space. The garden is one that is consistently supported by everyone, and in different iterations of the things that they may need in their life. So it's just been a beautiful experience for us. We continue to cultivate things like cotton, indigo, some historical dyes as well, like madder root. We're looking at native plants, yarrow. We definitely grow different strains of corn, blue Hopi sunflowers. And so we're looking again at annually sort of checking in to see like what are some things that people are interested. We really do consider it a demonstration garden. So the opportunity for people to see things like flax or, you know, cotton is sort of an anomaly. And it's a beautiful thing to have people come and be able to say like, oh, this is hemp. This is what the beginning of that thing looks like. We would love to also be able to process it as the processing center grows, to show, again, more demonstrations of how those things can be utilized. So this is just the beginning for us. This is our harvest in the summer of 2020. And so we were really looking at, as you can see, we have like a really robust amount of indigo in the front. That's probably 100 plants. So we tend to kind of keep our indigo in the front, just as sort of like an intriguing thing for people to understand. Like a lot of people think it's basil. And so it's nice to be able to have people come in to see it. We also do fresh leaf dyeing during the summer with people. And we've had a lot of community support with our processing. So these have all been very, you know, beautiful experiences for folks. Again, with our processing, we do currently a water extraction process. So you see Rosa here leading two volunteers to work on this like 100-gallon barrel that has been soaking for some days. And so obviously summer being the height of when we do this process, it also tends to be our hardest time of the season. It's very hot, you all know that. It's also a lot of labor for a very limited amount of return. But again, it really is about showing and sort of supporting the work that and these practices that we want to keep a part of our culture. And so with that, we also have consistently done community workshops. In COVID at this moment, it's been a really big challenge for us. Obviously starting in that modality has given us the capacity to think on our feet and be a little bit different about how we're doing those things. So the really wonderful part is in the summertime, we hold all of our workshops outside. And we've also been able to have a lot of workshops with different student groups throughout the year. The last one that I did was in December with a community group of about 20 people inside of our studio. And I'm glad that we were able to do that, because at this point, we're really trying to decide where our indoor engagement is going to be. And then also my work in sort of the 9 years of teaching natural dyes really runs the gamut. I've been able to teach and be a guest artist at the Pyramid Atlantic Center in Hyattsville. I do create pigments out of, or paints out of the pigments of earth pigments and natural, using plant matter. And then I also teach a mordanting technique, which is considered sort of a direct application process where the color attaches directly. So I do that through silk screening, through stamping, and a variety of different ways, hand painting and things like that. So these are some examples of that work. We also we also started a collective of 5 farms this year through a project called Nature's Color. An organization called Innovation Works here in Baltimore City was given some funding from an outside funder to look at market research and market viability of natural dyes in Baltimore and in the region. I've been consulting on that project for a year now. So it started in November of 2020. 2020. It's so funny, like time is such a trip. So November 2020. And so to this day, we're still sort of working on projects based around trying to understand more of the maker side, entrepreneur side. Where are we looking at with like textiles and consumables? What are the things that we can build an ecosystem to feed into? So we had 5 farms within Baltimore, 2 in South Baltimore, 2 in West Baltimore, and 1 in East Baltimore. And they grew a variety of natural dye plants for the project. We've collected those and we will be reselling seeds from that project through Botanical Colors in about a month's time. We also have a lot of indigo that we're working on trying to dry process through a small batch Sukumo practice, as well as being able to sell the pigment that we extracted in the summer that were harvested from these farms. And so that's my son. He's much bigger now, but this is the first year of us really working on the garden and reshaping it into what it is today. So this was in the spring of 2020. And we're really excited to be able to bring people in and really at whatever level. It's kind of a thing that I like to just tell people, like, just show up, we'll be there. Someone will be there every Saturday from noon to 3, unless it's a holiday. We don't know exactly, in advance, like what we'll be working on, but it's like whatever the garden needs in that moment. And that's really important to us to respect and connect to the garden. Our garden is also no-till, so we don't do a lot of sort of like disruption of the ecosystem and the things that are happening. We try to keep that symbiosis connected. We do bring in different kinds of compost, mushroom composting as well. And we're really looking at like a lot of the seeds sort of self-starting. So a lot of things will just show up. We don't call plants weeds. We call them plants we're not cultivating. We do let a great amount of things grow throughout the season to see if it's something that we're interested, or specifically there might be a new person who's like, oh, this might be an interesting thing to try. And so we'll really put ourselves in a position of stewarding and tending, as opposed to like really deciding what and where things are. We're also implementing a small batch tea offering that we're calling What the Garden Gave, because there's a lot of plants that come in that are medicinal and that are really wonderful for us to use, but often people look at them selectively or don't utilize them. So that's work that we're doing right now with a commercial kitchen. And yeah, I wanted to also just show some examples of my own personal work. I don't get to do as much as I used to, and I actually feel okay with that. In this season, I don't know if I have anything with me upstairs, but I tend to do a lot of stitching on these things. So the piece on the far right that is an iron and tannin piece done with mud that I hand painted a couple of years ago. I'm now adding just some running stitches to it. The bottom right piece that is a logwood and a discharge of citric acid with the orange and purple. I tend to work on all of these pieces, and then kind of in the downtime of farming and meditation, as you all are very aware of experiencing, I just kind of work on those things in the quiet of the winter months. So yeah, that's kind of my presentation. I don't think that's it.
Well, thank you. That's awesome. Just love seeing what you're doing and getting a chance to see some of your artwork as well.
Thanks.
So you mentioned that you have products, like you are offering tea and pigments and things. Where do you sell those?
Yeah, so right now we're working on just getting those things up on our personal site, but we've sold, this will be the second year that we've sold our seeds through Botanical Colors. So we'll sell our indigo seeds again. I've done some germination tests in the last month. And we'll also likely be selling those plants because they're, they're very, very viable and they're beautiful. And I think I'm going to have someone put them in a greenhouse because they're going to get too big for our indoor grow light by the time they're ready to go into to the ground. But so we'll sell live plants at our studio, and we'll also have or larger plants at the studio, and then we will have pigments and things for sale. Right now it's a challenge only because with the Nature's Color project through Innovation Works, we're really just looking at like how to move those offerings, because again, the pigment is only a certain quantity. There's only so much pigment that we can make. So we're trying to decide if that should be more on the local level for selling that versus trying to sell it, wholesale in another place. So we're just kind of looking at that because we're essentially trying to get another round of investment money to be able to pay farmers for another season of growing. That includes land rental, as well as paying them a normal farming wage, which is between $17 and $25. And so we pay on the higher end per hour. So it is not an inexpensive undertaking, but also we are really excited to be able to have that be a consistent part of the annual sort of like crop rotation for some of these farms.
Awesome. Great. So how did you get interested in natural dyes?
Yeah, so it's not a direct sort of story, I guess. I began my career as a motion graphic artist. So I used to live and work in New York for television and movies. And I was ready to kind of, go out in the world and do something a little different. I chose to move to Mexico in 2005. And I didn't speak Spanish or have any language, that would support me doing that or any relationships to people. I just kind of felt like it was time for me to go do something. And fortunately, the show that I was working on, actually, the art director handed me this book one day out of the loft of the show, and it was called Oaxaca. And so when I looked at it, I was like, that's where I'm going to go, So that was really the catalyst for me. I saved for a year and I moved to Mexico. And so there I began learning how to weave, an apprentice in Teotitlán del Valle, which is the weaving village, as well as learning different techniques through artisan relationships, embroidery, and traditional sort of hand weaving. And so I think that was my introduction to textiles, and also that there were these stories of natural dyes. And so I was able to see certain things, but because of the way that the market had been for so long, the commercial market was really looking for fast results and fast processing. And so when you're taking months to weave something, you also have to then think like, how long can I take to dye this thing? So I knew natural dyers, but they had all been processing chemicals to make their weaving. So that was my first introduction to the native species, obviously like cochineal and pomegranates and like a variety of things that people were doing, but not actively. And then I moved, traveled for a couple more years, traveling and learning through other countries and through different artisans. And then I moved to Mexico, and I had a friend who we decided to do a project for like a bag. It was something in New York. It was like a CFDA thing. I didn't know what it was or how big it was, but a friend sent it to me, and so a friend in Oakland and I decided to take on sort of the eco um, competition, and we were getting all of these like upcycled materials, and she is from El Salvador, and so she brought up indigo and said, you know, this is work that people in my country do, and we should give it a try. Her mom sent us all the supplies, and I was like, this is so exciting. We had everything, and then I was like, okay, show me how to do it. She's like, I don't know how to do it. And so I was like, I'm confused. She's like, oh no, I've never done it before. So basically I just took 3 months, and I got really obsessed. And it was organic indigo, but it was a chemically reduced vat. So we used thiourea dioxide and lye, but I mined every piece of information I could find. I was fortunate to be in the Bay Area at the time, so there were a lot of like people who were doing things, but in a like distant, separate way. So there's a lot of dyers and textile artists in sort of from that craft, California art and craft movement, but it wasn't like I could just go to an event and be like, hey, anybody know how to do this indigo? So I just did a lot of research and a lot of trial and error. And I started using coal wax because I wasn't certain how to get the vats the proper temperature, or I didn't understand a lot of things. And so that was really the beginning of my exploration into natural dyes. And from there, you know, through relationships in different places, through different artisans, and also just my own interests, like that's how I've learned to do natural dyes. I took one class in 2010, I believe, at MIWA in Vancouver, and they have a symposium annually, and I have a dear friend who lives there, and I would visit a couple times a year. And so she introduced me to their store and their work, and eventually I decided to participate in a natural dye workshop. It was their first, and it was really exciting. It was 4 days. I believe there were 20 of us. It was 4 days, 9 to 6 every day. I was lucky it was like right down the street from her house, so I could just like walk there. And it was amazing. You know, it was this sort of like moment where all of these different concepts and ideas around natural dyes were explored. And when I got back to my studio, I was like, I'm not doing any of that. That was all way too much. And it's just not for me right now. So I went back to my indigo vat, you know, tried some of the techniques that they were doing, reducing indigo naturally, but otherwise I was kind of like, I'm not doing any of that. And it took me a couple of years to employ that personally in my work. And I just continued to practice and kind of realized that I didn't have any people to like work on stuff with. So then I started teaching because I wanted to have friends that I could talk to about my work. So
Always good to have a fiber tribe.
yeah,
That's how I sort of feel. There's so many good people doing it. So around here, now that you've worked in Baltimore quite a bit, what do you think, are there plants that you recommend for natural dyes that grow well in this area?
I mean, I think there's still so much for me to explore. One of the things that I've become to understand, the very first season that Rosa and I started this natural dye garden, we had been super excited, is that like we started so many plants and there was so little time to like get to know them, you know? And I think that was a mistake on our part, just because we didn't get to like, you know, if you're doing everything, like I will say of certain artisans I know, and even when I was doing my work in the Bay and selling it commercially, people would be like, oh, did you knit these socks? And I'm like, do you need me to knit the socks too? Like, it's only so much that you can do, right? Because it's all a lot of work. And right, like where's your commitment level? So we were super excited. We started flax. The flax does really well here. And then we were like, what are we gonna do with this flax? who's gonna try to process this? Like, do we have to dry it? When do we cut it? Like, you just realize that all the things that it takes to understand something, you're stretched so thin, because you can't really focus or investigate. And so really what I ask people to do now in the garden is like, take on one or two plants in that season and like explore it. It helps us because then we get information that we can collect and record and know more about something through your experience. It also just gives you something that you can say, like, every time I come to the garden, if you're a person who wants to come consistently, you get to check on your plant. You get to see how things are doing. You get to connect with its growing patterns. And I just love that nurturing part of it. So I will say, like, we have grown yarrow for the last 4 years. Like I could go to the garden right now and the yarrow will still be bright green. Like, it grows so well. It does not need anyone or anything. But then we have something like cotton, where we've been growing the Sea Island cotton. And it's been a hard year this year for really having it bloom properly for us. So it always depends on how the seasons are running. We're all very aware of climate change. So I think that I would sort of leave it up to where you're bioregional, like, specifically what your area, because we might even have a difference in, like, some people are in Delaware, some people are closer to, the coast. And so I think that those kinds of investigations are personal. Madder root has grown really well for us here. We're in our 4th season growing madder root. Indigo does really well for us, the Persicaria tinctoria. I have tried, and I do try every single year to grow the tropical indigo. Some seasons I get it to hit, some seasons I don't. It never really grows like it should. Again, it's an investigation. I'm also trying to collect seeds because I do believe heavily in collecting your own seeds. Corn grows really well. All the Hopi varieties, the Hopi blue corn. We continue to grow it off of the very first seeds that we started. So again, we collect our seeds every year and start them from the same thing. Marigolds grow exceptionally well. I mean, I think that's pretty much a standard. We have these really big ones that I have to order every year because I'm not ever really able to collect seeds from them. They're called bobtail, Oriental bobtail, and they can get like massive, So we usually string those up just to have them as a meditation and a decoration. Nettle grows well here for some people. Stinging nettle, it doesn't grow always great for us. Like, it always just depends. I don't know if that's helpful, but yeah, those are some kind of beginners that I would start with. And I'm just trying to think of what other, we grow a lot of Tulsi, which I love. Tulsi is an energetic plant, so I grow that a lot. Yeah, we have a new, it's not new, it's been in the garden for 2 years now, but we've started growing something called Waikate, which is a Peruvian marigold, which grow really tall and slim. We're going to sell those seeds this season. It's also useful as a medicine. So we're kind of looking at things that have dual, and most plants do have a multitude of things that they offer to support our health. So
great, thank you. Do others have questions? I feel like I'm sort of monopolizing this. Yes.
I have a question. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Perfect. I am really excited, Kenya, to hear that you all have started exploring madder. I know as a natural dye, the plant has to mature for 4 years before the roots are able to give you color. So I was just wondering how long ago you guys started your madder experimentations, and if that's something you've been thinking about or something you're interested in.
Yeah, so we started our matter. This will be the fourth season. It's about 3 to 5 years. Some people I know will just continue to grow their let their roots sort of enrichen in color, like to get that alizarin more sort of potent, as it were. So we could have taken our plants out. You need to do it. In the fall of the following season. So we would have done it this fall. I kind of decided to leave things just because there was a lot happening in the garden for us. And so I just made the decision not to uproot anything. There's also a person who reached out to me several years ago who apparently learned in Indonesia a way that you can harvest without they said that they've had the same 5 plants for 8 years and they continue to harvest from those plants. So I'm actually interested in sort of looking back to see if I can find that person and learn the possibility of doing that, because we again have a really, our space is not that large and we're not looking to sort of have an industrial production, but I do want to be able to sustain those plants. So we have some that would be in their 4th year this year, 22, and another group that will be in their 3rd year. So we had started successive growings. Last year though, I probably spent like $100 in madder root to grow in all of the 5 gardens, and none of them did well with germination. So this season we were actually fortunate to be able to harvest our own seeds from our plants, which was great. It's my first time doing it. We'll probably start some germination tests because they're it's not a ton, but they'll be just for our garden. But one of the things that I'm interested in seeing is like what the viability of those seeds are, like when it's best to pick them, what that sort of process looks like. And also we didn't get to do it after our second, because the second year is when you get your flowers, and when you can, obviously the flowers then go to seed. We had an elder in our community cut them because he thought they were weeds. So that's another thing about having a community garden, is that there's at least like twice a year where you'll see me just running up and down the alley losing it, because I'm like, I told y'all don't come in here and just do things that, and like, here you go, trying to be helpful, and like your help is not helpful. So I try to I'm trying to be a little less, in necessity of those things, but it's hard when you've been waiting for 4 years to see, like, we didn't know if the plant was going to live, he basically eviscerated them. And I basically went and did like a ritual over them and cleared the energy and prayed. And I don't know if any of that had helped, but they came back. But also it's hard to know, and why another reason I'm not interested in having this be a production garden, it's because it's everybody's garden, so that means that sometimes the people who come and plant something well-intended will also be the same people who will come and try to pull it up because they've had a certain day that day, and they're like, oh, I'm going to go to the garden and weed. And I'm like, we don't weed here. That's not what we do. And people will come in, and I had sweetgrass, literally, like an elder who has been there for years, and she pulled it all up. And I was like, you are just like somewhere else, and this is not what we're here to do. Tending looks a lot different than grooming, and so it's just sort of understanding those things. So that was a long story just to say, yes, we have madder root.
No, thank you for that. That was really helpful and insightful, and I definitely understand. It sounds a lot like community studios where, yeah, sometimes things can happen that are unexpected. I had just one more other quick question. I am really interested in sort of this idea. So this is like a me thing, but I'm really interested in this idea of sort of place-based color. And I do a lot of ethically foraging, wild, plants for dye in the city. So I wanted to know if that was something that you all have ever thought about or were interested in, or were you sort of just excited about cultivating the dyes yourself?
I think we're excited by many things, and that's why it's great to have so many people part of it, because what I might be excited about in this moment, you might be drawn to something else. And so then we can, break bread and sit down and connect over, like, what did you, investigate, or what do you want to explore? So we have, and we do wild forage. We have wild foraged on 95. Because there's some great growing on the side of the highway. I do not recommend anyone do it, but there's, sumac all over. There's a ton of goldenrod. There's a ton of, there's just a variety of things that you can collect and you can harvest. And again, I think it's really paying attention to what your surroundings are. We do really want to be able to give people sort of keys to how to get to those places. Again, that's like a bigger project, but Osage is a tree that was built very specifically in this area for delineation barrier building. And so there are a lot of Osage orange trees throughout the city, in, Druid Hill Park, on Parks and People land. And so we have relationships, and we continue to build relationships with woodworkers who might be working with that so that we can get their wood scraps. So we're definitely interested in things that are local and, things that are not just thinking about, the historical industrial dyes in that way.
Well, thank you so much, Kenya. I really appreciate you answering my questions and going more in depth about your thoughts and sort of like where you see Blue Light Junction going. I really love the work that you all are doing in Baltimore. It's really exciting for me being a natural dyer and weaver. So yeah, just thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks. And I hope you at any point, reach out and, again, like being a part of the studio is a very, I don't know what the word is. Like, there are people who were just like hanging out, and now with this grant that we got, now they get paid to do some of the stuff that they were hanging out to do. So it's just one of those things where it's informal, but that's how we're building anything. It's just like, come stick around, and find your way in the way that works for you. So thank you.
Great. Kirsten, did you have a question?
Hi, thank you so much. This has been a wonderful talk. I have so many questions. I guess I was really curious about some of the work that you're doing, that you talked about Nature's Color, the 5 farms that you're working with, and wondering what plants you really focused on with those farms and how that went. This is the first year, right? Or second year?
Yeah, this is the first year with Nature's Colors. In 2020. I, as Blue Light Junction, worked with 3 of the farms to just start growing, was able to get a really small stipend for people to participate. We only had 2 farms grow that year. Everybody was kind of, trying to get their selves together, through the pandemic, but also this season there was much more investment, and the I won't say the issue. One of the things that happens and has happened, as well as with the Baltimore Natural Dye Initiative, is that money doesn't always align with the growing season. So there was money for sort of researching and marketing and looking at, different things that we're analyzing, but paying farmers and deciding if there was going to be a farming season didn't come. So I basically just started buying seeds out of pocket, because I didn't know if we were going to get money, but I also felt like the worst thing that we could do is stop growing, and not be learning. So even if there were people who were like would agree to farm without an outcome, a financial outcome. Like there are plenty of farmers who are interested on just learning about a plant. And so I wanted to make sure that we could at least even try that. So there were a lot of things that I started in this season of growing with Nature's Color. I started Weld, I started Matter. I'm also interested in herbs as medicine. So I started marshmallow root, I started comfrey, we started marigolds, indigo. Yeah, there's a variety. I think I was even trying to do specifically to build sort of, there's one area in East Oakland called, the farm's called Bliss Meadows, and they are also like a natural preserve. And so they have a lot of land. So I was also trying to have them grow, looking at like more of like that sumac and it's escaping my name right now. I just said it. Tall goldenrod. So goldenrod, thinking about those things. And I think that it was, again, like that fascination for people with indigo, you know, like everybody was really present with the indigo. And then there would be other things like hibiscus or certain things, and people didn't focus on them, or, you know, so we had I think because we missed the opportunity to really teach people about other things. That's what we're looking at this season. Again, we have no money for, you know, going back into our second season for Nature's Color. But we just had a meeting and I'm like, listen, I spent like $1,000 in seeds last year, you know, I'm not going to do that if people are sort of uncertain about growing. What would you like to do? And they're like, we'll give you a grant, just buy the seeds. And so one of the things that I really want to do is to build in a training component where in like late February, early March, we have the opportunity to sit with people and, you know, have them come to a 2-day workshop, give them sort of the information about all of these different plants that have grown well in the region, and then offer them the opportunity to grow those things and to present back end sort of investment on buying and investing in their harvest. So yeah, I think it was a really big push. You know, I'm kind of surprised that like I made it through through the year. Yeah, so that's kind of what we're interested in this season, is like I'm trying to not necessarily demystify the natural dye plants, but kind of to like say indigo is like not the only thing that has beauty and possibility, and you know, that really is my work, you know, because they're just people who are like, oh, we just hear this thing. Or historically, you know, as Black people, understanding the history of indigo as one of the 5 cash crops that enslaved people were brought here to work. Like there's a lot of draw for historical context, but there's so many other plants that have really deep stories, and my work is really to uplift and inspire people to work with those plants.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Does anyone else have a question you'd like to ask?
Anne has a question.
Yes.
Yes, thank you. It's more in the nature of networking with you.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sort of with the Fibershed. I've been on and off, as Marion will know. But I do have many ideas rumbling through my brain as I'm talking to you, as I'm listening to you. The one is that there is a large group of people on a Facebook group called Maryland Gardening for the Environmentally Conscious, that's very much into restoring native seed populations. And they have a great deal of experience starting seed. And the native seeds are not like vegetable seeds. It's not like you buy something and stick it in the ground. Usually, sometimes they are biannual seeds where they will only sprout every other year or every 5th year, for instance. Sometimes they need a cold stratification. Sometimes they need a chemical stratification that would mimic going through a bird's stomach or a mammal stomach before they will sprout. So if you are having difficulty with seeds and all, that's a group that is very knowledgeable and very experimental in what kinds of seeds they will try and what they will start, and doing wonderful things in their gardens. A lot of them would be willing to try dyes as well as native plants, as long as it's environmentally conscious. There is a lot of the master gardeners are also very much into this. And there are a number of crafters, and a direction I can suggest for you is a Freetown farm sponsored by the Community Ecology Institute in Howard County, run by Chiara Demore, has a maker space, and they might be a space that would be willing to do dye plants. They certainly were very interested in doing fiber plants. Before my life got turned upside down and I wasn't able to follow through, I was going to put nettle and dogbane there as part of a project, an experimental project to work fibers out of nettle and dogbane, and they were going to give me a space for doing that. So they may very much with their maker space, it would be very much in line with it to do dye plants as well, because they're interested in the spinning and weaving. And then another source of people interested in the historical aspect of it, and they have asked for a workshop from Fibershed, is the Banneker Museum, up in Ellicott City. So they are, and another, they may have connections with and I know the Freetown Farm has connections with the Native Americans who are in the area, who are also trying to preserve their heritage and look for places where they can grow their plants and continue their heritage.
Thank you, Anne. That's wonderful. All that information I'm taking some notes on, and that'd be great. Thank you for sharing.
You're welcome. And if you'd like to connect further, Marion can give you my email address.
And you can just put it in the chat if you want.
Oh, can do that.
Thank you. That's awesome. Yeah.
So, Kenya, you said that you were open on Saturdays from 12 to 3 for people to come and show up and help. Is that going to be a kind of a seasonal thing? Like, are you doing that now on Saturdays or waiting until like March or?
Well, we had been doing it, all through December, and I was there last weekend. This weekend, I was at another historical farm out near Solomon's Island, just sort of thinking through different possibilities with them. But we had someone at the garden that day as well. So I think because it's just unknown times and it's been so cold, I sort of, it's like we're not doing workshops indoors. We've canceled our January sort of offerings, or we didn't post them because we felt hesitant and wanted to keep people safe. But with the garden at this point, we're going to start doing outdoor work. And this is my least favorite time to do outdoor work. I actually really hate it. It's cold and I don't like it, and I just don't. So, but we will be there every Saturday. I mean, my suspicion is that there will not be a lot of people there. So it feels like we don't have to make any shifts in that way. I don't imagine that like 15 people are going to show up on a cold Saturday afternoon. So if the numbers seem reasonable, like, we're keeping that open. If it feels more comfortable for you, February or March, we'll definitely be there. But that, I mean, if it were not for COVID, it would be a consistent, we're just there. That's our commitment, is to be there every Saturday, 12 to 3.
And if we want to buy indigo seeds from you, should we just go to Botanical Colors, or how should we do that?
Yeah, I would say, for now, you can go to Botanical Colors because we're fulfilling our wholesale order with them right now. I only say that because we haven't yet put up our like shop payment for it. It doesn't take much, but because I'm not the only person that can do it, but I have been historically. So
totally understand that.
It's just always like, oh, is that another thing I have to do? So Kathy is great, and they're really set up, and they're super supportive of our work consistently. So yeah, they and again, if you find yourself in a position where you're gonna get them later, then you can just come, you can get them from us. You can come pick them up, anything that kind of feels reasonable.
Yeah, Kathy did mention you on the Friday feedback this last Friday.
Oh,
so
nice. Yeah.
Yeah. Expect a lot of sales, I would think.
Yeah, we sold, like, I think they still have some, but we sold 900 seed packets to them last year. It was
That's awesome.
enormous. And I think they might have like 200 left, but yeah, it was great. So we have a smaller order this season, and we're also going to sell our Waikate through them because she's interested, and that will be a smaller order too. But I suspect that as the season kind of moves along, we might have more people who are interested. So, we'll see where that goes. We definitely have enough seeds. Each farm sort of produced in a different way. Like some seeds sort of shot up really quickly. So through the project, we'll have like the information from which garden each seed was harvested and the date of the harvest. But yeah, the performance of each plant is so interesting to watch, like in the last 4 weeks. And they all came up. I'm not sure if you all do this, but I soak my seeds overnight. So some people do that, some people don't. Also, when you do that, unless you let them dry for an additional day, like they're hard, they like clump all together. So it's kind of a pain to like start your seeds because you're like, I have this clump, I can't get it off my fingers. Like how, but as we all know, indigo grows really well in community. And so, you want at least 4 to, I'd say, I don't know, we usually do like 6 to 10, but seedlings kind of together. But it's interesting, I would say within like 4 days, the seeds on a heating mat had started to sprout, so they're very strong. But again, they perform in different ways. So it's just interesting to see those seeds sort of coming up. And also for us, it's like so nice this time of year to just walk in and see like this sauna of like beautiful little trees growing, and we're all like, the first thing you do is go over and see how they're doing, so yeah.
Awesome. Any other questions for our speaker today? We cannot thank you enough for coming today. This has been such a bright spot on a cold, snowy day, and it's been great hearing your story as well as all about these plants. I'm just super excited about the work you're doing and about Blue Light Junction as well. So we hope to see a lot more of you.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Can I just ask a quick question to Anne to repeat the name of that Facebook group?
It's Maryland Area Gardening for the Environmentally Conscious.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Great. Well, I hope you all stay warm. Have a great evening. Take good care.
Take
Bye-bye.
care, everybody.
Thank
Thank
you.
you so much.
Thank you so much.